On one hand, we have a live-action remake of a well-beloved cartoon being made by the giant corporation that was the Big Mouse itself. On the other, we have a light-hearted DC superhero film which is a part of the DCEU. Two films that I have two radically different views on, and we're gonna find out why they either suck or fail. Wait, that's not it. Welcome to appabendyt Uncapped, the series of reviews by yours truly. Today's review is gonna be on Disney's live-action remake of Dumbo and DCEU's brand new superhero film Shazam. But before we get to the reviews, I want to say huge thanks for liking and sharing my videos, subscribing and following me on social media, and for supporting me on Patreon, PayPal, and many other means, links down below. Also, huge thanks to Vinyl Migraine for the pledge on Patreon. You are fantastic. First on the chopping block, Dumbo. Don't you just love it when a company that starts bringing great animation to everyone for decades is now the biggest entertainment corporation in the world that is gobbling pretty much everything on its way and screwing up its intellectual properties in the process? No matter how wholesome they present themselves and no matter how good their films are, I still firmly believe that Disney is corporate evil, and while I am pretty evil in some ways, I don't think I will be ever as evil as Disney ever could. So believe me when I say that the idea for a live-action Dumbo film is just dumb. I have no idea why Disney's live-action films should exist to this day and age other than Disney wants to make those big bucks and they're running out of ideas. I mean, sure, live-action Disney films are nothing new. We have 101 Dalmatians years ago, but even that one was just a pointless remake. Their other live-action films are just okay, and I heard The Jungle Book was surprisingly good. So what about Dumbo? Is the idea of Dumbo as dumb as the actual film itself? Well, let's get into the story. Colin Farrell's character just come back from war to visit his kids on Danny DeVito's circus, but the circus isn't doing so well, so they have to rack up some new form of entertainment for the audiences and keep the circus running. Ladies and gentlemen, when I name the characters based on the actor's name, that remarks how much impact the story has with me. Oh, and there was a flying elephant in there somewhere. Let's try to fit that into this generic human story. Now, full disclosure, I haven't seen the original, at least not in full. I guess I saw it on TV on occasion, but I don't really remember. But one thing I do know for sure is that I do remember the original film being more about this guy, Dumbo. This film isn't really about Dumbo. This film is more about the people around Dumbo, and that, in my opinion, is a huge mistake. But to be honest, it's kind of expected when the original plan is to remake Dumbo with a more live-action setting. The film needs to have a more realistic plot. Dumbo is clearly the one film that we're looking for if you want something edgy. I wouldn't have issues with the human story if they weren't so bland and boring, but unfortunately they were so bland and boring. The characters are poorly done, I have zero investment in them whatsoever, and the tone is all over the place. There's a freaking death scene in the film 10 minutes in, and the moment it happens, I am so baffled I ended up laughing. Then again, this is a Tim Burton film, so inconsistent tone is to be expected. And you know what else is to be expected on a Tim Burton film? Well, the visuals look amazing. There's something very dreamy and whimsical about the way he films, something about the softness of the scene and the CGI, which surprisingly blends really damn well with the human characters. While the human characters do look human, they're not to the point where they are overtly realistic, and that blends really well with the CGI animals, etc. Also, Eva Green is hot. Eva Green with a French accent? Super hot. Eva Green with a French accent and wearing suits that expose her thighs. Okay, film, slow down. You're seriously going to make people go nuts. But unfortunately, the film looking great is, my opinion, the only good thing about this film. Dumbo himself is fine. He does a good job on looking cute and adorable. The one thing that I didn't like about him is that he's not on the film enough. Again, it's mostly about the human characters and their story is just not good. Dumbo's story gets left aside, which is insane because the original story is about Dumbo. In fact, this film is missing a key character, or at least the key character is reduced into a cameo. What is it with Disney films trying to bump the realism of a lot of their previous films? The original films work just fine, and they're still just fine. There's nothing wrong with bringing your kids to watch old school 2D style animations that you grew up with. Hell, I grew up with Sinbad and the Adventures of Tintin at the time when they're making Monsters Inc., which I also grew up on. Maybe try to find other intellectual properties that would work really well as a live-action setting, or better yet, make original stories. But in my opinion, the most ultimate failing of this film is that I saw this film because I was bored and I didn't have much else to do at home. So I went to the malls to check out a game store inside it and see if there's a film playing on the theaters nearby. I chose to see Dumbo because I was bored. In other words, I have very little expectations on this film, and it still manages to disappoint me to the point where I legit consider walking out of the theaters only 10 minutes in. Yeah. This film is that bad. Overall, Dumbo is dumb. The film looks pleasant, cheerful, and fun, but it doesn't feel pleasant, cheerful, and fun. Kind of like a radioactive teddy bear. Dumbo is good when he's on screen, but unfortunately, he's not on the screen that much, which is ironic for a film named Dumbo. Eva Green is hot, but that's all that I can say. Avoid this film at all costs, which thankfully most of you do. Next up, Shazam. Now, you might not know this, but I am a DC fanboy. However, I am no fan of the DCEU if you ask me. I didn't like Man of Steel, I didn't like Batman v Superman, I didn't like Suicide Squad, but I did like Justice League. Calm down, let me explain. Justice League isn't good. In fact, the film is garbage. I like it because of a very specific reason, which is that as a DC fanboy, I can finally see all of these edgy DC characters actually talk like human beings in this cinematic universe. A necessary step into the right direction that was lost during the production of the first two DCEU films. The film is still garbage overall, but I do appreciate the change, and I like seeing my favorite characters just, talk like human beings and joke around. Aside from those, Wonder Woman was okay, and Aquaman was, well, I wouldn't say it's good, but I do have fun with it. Wonder Woman is clearly the best out of all of the DCU films, but it didn't exactly wow me. So Shazam doesn't really have to do something truly spectacular in order to wow me. It just needs to be a good film. And I have to say that Shazam is not the best DCEU film. So you get the drill, let's get into the story. Billy Batson is an orphan who gets adopted many times by a lot of foster parents, but he escapes every single time. When he was defending his foster brother, he gets chased down by a bunch of bullies into the subway until he meets up with the wizard Shazam that gives him the power to turn into Captain Marvel. Not that one. Billy is now trying to figure out all of the superpowers and try to save the world with it. But can he really be a true superhero with all of his kid attitude? And that's the story. So where are we again? Wait a second, did I say that it's not the best DCU film? Okay, my bad. What I meant to say was that Shazam is not just the best DCU film. Shazam is perhaps one of my favorite superhero film of all time. No, I'm not kidding. This is amongst the best of the best superhero film that I have ever seen in my entire life. And I've seen quite a lot of superhero films. This would be up there in my own personal top 5. And let me tell you why. This film isn't a deconstruction of the superhero like what Man of Steel tries to do. Instead, this film is a reconstruction. It recognizes all of the ridiculous superhero tropes that we all know, love, and recognize, plays around with all of the tropes, and make them refreshing and new, even though it's something that we've seen a million times. Shazam, and to the same extent Bumblebee as well, proves that we can have a film that has a very basic plot that we've seen a million times, but present them into a package that feels refreshing and new. It's kind of like drinking water after being so exhausted. Sure, it doesn't taste anything special, but it's refreshing and invigorating. I am astonished by how the humor works so well in this film. A lot of times the humor in superhero films feel really forced, something that they have to add in because it's a superhero film in current year, they have to have some form of humor in there. Films that are supposed to be serious are now nothing but a string of jokes and one-liners that make people laugh instead of creeping them out. Venom, you're stupidly fun, but you're not a good film by any means. Shazam is a film that incorporates the humor so naturally within the story, and it really works. I was laughing my ass off along with everyone around the theaters because the jokes are so well implemented, so naturally woven into the story, and in character to all the individuals who are playing their roles. What I love about the humor is that it's so ridiculously basic, and yet the timing was so perfect. It shows how even the most innocuous and seemingly unfunny actions can work so well as a humorous scene. It just needs the absolute best timing possible to incorporate it, and it does it really damn well. What I love about this film as well are the characters. They're all fantastic, and I'm shocked at how much role the side characters play in Billy Batson's development. Billy Batson himself is really good. His development is very well done. I think it could be better articulated and contrasted with the villain, but it works for me. The villain isn't really anything special, but it did successfully test the hero to his limits, which in my opinion is good enough. But what I love the most about Shazam is the fact that this is a film that knows what it wants to do and tries to accomplish on what it wants to do. The film has sets of goals to accomplish, and I feel like it has finished all of them. It feels very well directed and planned from start to finish. I feel like there are no scenes wasted and no stories that need to be cut. It's the right amount of time, the right amount of story, the right amount of characters, and it succeeds in delivering what it wants to deliver. Overall, Shazam is everything that I wanted from a superhero film and more. A fun, lighthearted comedy film that not just exceeds in being a comedy, but also exceeds in being a superhero story. It's a ridiculously funny comedy that also works really damn well as a reconstruction of superhero films, presenting the most tired cliches and turning them to something refreshing. I cannot recommend Shazam enough to everyone. It's bold for me to say that it's one of my favorite superhero films, but at this very moment, it is one of my favorite superhero films. It's a film that goes back to basic and presents them in such a refreshing manner that truly exceeds my expectations. To see a film with such a basic story presented in such a refreshing manner requires a lot of talent and hard work, and Shazam is definitely one hell of a piece of work. Go see Shazam instead of that film about the flying elephant thing. What was that one called again?